Subscribe to The Honest Critique for current affairs, movie, book, and product reviews. Also, make sure you press the bell icon to get notified whenever we upload a new video. The views, information, or opinions expressed during the video series are solely those of the individuals and do not necessarily represent those of The Honest Critique and its employees. The following video contains strong language which may be offensive to some viewers. Viewer discretion advised.
Hello and welcome to a very special episode we are recording today. I'm delighted to be joined by former Justice Minister Ms. Ail Shakid with us. Thank you so much, ma'am, for taking your time and speaking to us. So I wanted to start with the first part about the ICJ decision. In the recent ICJ decision regarding Israel's action in Gaza, what is your perspective on the directives given by the court, particularly those related to preventing harm to civilians and using the word genocide when it comes to Israel's campaign in Gaza?
It's a disgrace for humanity, I think, that such a court actually even discuss the lie and the blood label about Israel. Listen, the UN is a biased and political and sometimes anti-Semitic organization. This court, it's not a judicial platform. It's just a political platform. The judges are being elected by the UN. And I think it's, as I said, disgrace for humanity. Israel was attacked by the Hamas, I think the most severe crime against humanity in the recent years. The Hamas did atrocities that humanity has never shown, like raping women, torture them, decapitated children, burning families. They took out hearts from soldiers. They did horrible things, many of them for children and women. And instead of discussing those atrocities and the crimes against humanity that Hamas did, Hamas launched a genocidal, barbaric attack on Israel. They discuss against, they are doing a discussion against Israel. So I want to be clear, all the people in Israel, and we are united about it, think it's a disgrace and it's a shame for the UN and for the international community. At even the discussion itself, the results of the discussions, they are not really important because Israel is giving humanitarian aid anyway without this ridiculous judicial court. And Israel is trying to not to hurt civilians that were not involved. But, we need to understand the Hamas, they are using their own population in order to defend themselves. So sometimes they send children to the IDF and they send women to the IDF, and they're using human shield. They don't care about their population. They don't care that their children are dying, and they're just using their population. They could have surrendered, and to prevent this war after the massacre, they choose not to surrender, and they choose to push on their population not to evacuate the war zone. That Israel spreading flyers, and they send text message, and they do it with ram calls. They're just, Israel is really trying to convince the population to leave a war zone, to go to humanitarian zone. But the Hamas try to push them to stay because they're using them. This is the reality. And I think it's really, it's a disgrace that even this discussion was ever done.
And I wanted to understand from here that do you think uh, the Israel's campaign in Gaza will be effectively disturbed, or will there be any changes after the decision by the ICJ, or it doesn't really bother?
No, it doesn't really affect, because we are giving Gaza humanitarian aid anyway. We are giving them fuel, we are giving them food, although most of those products are going to the Hamas. If you ask me, I think we should not have done that. We should have give humanitarian aid to specific humanitarian zone, and not that in the end it will arrive to the Hamas. The Hamas used the fuel in order to continue and be underground in their tunnels, and this just create the war to be longer. If we would have not given the Hamas fuel, then they couldn't have stayed in those tunnels, and the war would have entered earlier, and less people would have died because of that. So we are giving them help to the population anywhere, anyway, so it doesn't really matter.
And I want to come to the day after in Gaza. And based on one of your interview, you've mentioned of actually transforming Khan Yunis into a soccer field and pressurizing countries to accept quotas of Gazan refugees. So I wanted to understand from here, uh, could you elaborate on reasoning behind the proposal? And do you feel that a lot of people who have been criticizing your statement that Israel is trying to ethnically cleanse the Palestinian people of the conflict of this?
I didn't say it, it's a lie. What I said is that people from Gaza that want to immigrate, the international community and Israel should let them do so. Because currently, if a specific person wants from his own will to leave Gaza, he can't. The international community is hypocrites, because in the media, they claim that they care about the people in Gaza, but in reality, they don't. Because if a specific civilian wants to leave Gaza and immigrate, no one wants to accept him. And also, he can't get out, because in Rafiah, the Egyptian and the Hamas, they want thousands of dollars in order, if someone wants to leave Gaza, they just can't. And what I said is that the international community and Egypt and Israel should allow families that want to immigrate to leave Gaza. That's all.
Could you share what would be the military's role and lessons they should learn after the October 7th failure?
Look, in Gaza, there was, in the last almost 20 years, anti-Semitic Nazis regime. When the IDF entered Gaza, the soldiers saw almost in every house rockets under children's bed, missiles in schools, Mein Kampf and Nazis ideology in their homes. So we need to understand that we need to do denazification to the people in Gaza. It will take time. And of course that Israel need to have the military control on this area. And I think that the international community, again, should help and like establish international force, maybe of the moderate Arab state, in order to manage their lives. But we will not agree that the Hamas will continue and rule Gaza. The Hamas actually transferred Gaza to a one big terror camp. There are also people from Gaza that now start to demonstrate against Hamas, and they start to understand what they did to them. So the international community should help Israel to control Gaza for the current, the 5 years from now. And I think it's not only Israel problem. By the way, the radical Islam, it's a problem of the Western world. Currently, it's Gaza. Tomorrow, it can be in the US or in the UK or anywhere else. And as I said, now Israel fights the fight of the free world, of the humanity, and the Western world should help Israel.
But do you see the two-state solution proposed by the UN is potentially dead after October 7?
It's not relevant. We saw in October 7 that Israel withdrew till the last inch from Gaza. They had a state in Gaza. It was a terror state. It was a failed state. And we are seeing also in Judea and Samaria that 80% of the Palestinians support the massacre and support the Hamas. So it's not relevant right now.
So I have a couple of last questions, and one of them I wanted to understand is one of the interviews you mentioned about the recovery of the post-war market and your assessment of governments handling the situation, particularly on restriction of Palestinian workers. And I wanted to understand because there was a proposal for Indian workers actually being transported to Israel instead of the existing Palestinian workers. Do you see that as a viable option, given the fact that some of the workers who did come to work in the kibbutz actually give information to Hamas? So would Israel want to swap the Palestinians with incoming Indian workers?
When I was Minister of Interior, it was like 2 years ago, I started a process with India to bring workers from India to Israel, because already 2 years ago, we had lack of workers in construction and agriculture. So I think it doesn't relate to the current situation. Israel needs workers, and I think that Indian can be a solution for that.
So the last thing that I wanted to ask you is, you mentioned the events in one of the interview of October 7 were the biggest failure of the state, and you advocated that Prime Minister Netanyahu should agree on a date of elections to prevent further division. So I have two questions from this. One of the criticism has been that the judicial reforms, you also have advocated to limit the power of Israeli judiciary. It was when the judicial reforms proposed, when the proposal happened, the society was divided, and it created a rift which allowed Hamas to use it as an opportunity. So do you see, after the current situation right now, an election is the most viable option after this? And do you intend coming back to politics after the October 7 attacks?
So now we are in a war situation, and I don't want to talk about politics during the war. Our soldiers are now fighting in Gaza. We need to support them and to give them all the backup that they need, and not to deal with internal disagreements. Regarding my future, I don't know yet. There are many people now that are thinking, then talk with me and ask me to come back, but I really don't know yet. And now it's a wartime. In the wartime, we need to fight and not to deal with politics.
Just one thing that I want to understand for our Indian viewers, if you could explain, as an Israeli, not as, let's say, a former justice minister, but as a common Israeli, how has October 7 attacks shaped or changed your perspectives? Is there anything that happened personally to you after the attacks?
To me personally, not really. I knew all the time that in Gaza there is a terror state. No one thought that they will do such atrocities, that they will burn babies, that they will rape women, that they will torture children. No one thought that in 2023 things like that can happen. But I think that the public in Israel, I was always saying that we don't have a partner for peace. I think that more people in Israel now understand that, because the support for the Hamas is so high also in Judea and Samaria.
Well, that's all the question that I had. Thank you so much for taking.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Bye.